Well, people have been arriving since about 8 o'clock this morning. The doors open at 8 o'clock for people to come into the church by invitation only. The church, to Jeff's point, it is a tiny church. And I was told yesterday that somehow they're going to be able to put 300 people into this church for Rosalynn Carter this morning, including their overflow room. It's reminiscent of all the Sunday school lessons that Jimmy Carter taught on all those many Sundays over the past 40 years when this church would be packed to overflowing. It is a church of older members, and another church member just died last week. They're going to have another funeral tomorrow for that church member, and it's a concern that they have of keeping this church going. The Carters worked so hard to help found this church and to keep it going. You know, this church was founded more than 40 years ago because the other Baptist church in town would not admit people of color to their services, and members of that church split off and formed Maranatha Baptist Church. And this is where Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter and the family made their church home after they left the White House, and for the most of the past 40 years. And you know, Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter have worked so hard to promote Plains and to preserve Plains and to assure Plains' future. That is one of the major reasons they decided more than 20 years ago to be buried at their home on their property. They built a pond there, a small hill overlooking a pond on the Carter family property, the property where they built their house in 1960, where they've lived ever since, except for the years they were in the White House. They wanted to make sure that Plains would remain a source of history and education for people interested in the presidency and for people interested in all the work that Rosalynn Carter has done over the years, that people would still keep coming to Plains to honor not just the Carters, but really the kind of legacy that they hope people will take from their lives in public service. So this service today is going to be quiet. It's going to be full of music, though. Some of Rosalynn Carter's favorite hymns. There will be readings from members of the Carter family, children and grandchildren. There will be a sermon, a eulogy by the Carter family pastor, Tony Loudon. You heard him yesterday at the service in Atlanta. He participated in that service, and Pastor Loudon is going to be in this service officiating here this morning. So we expect it might take 60 minutes, 90 minutes, no one is really sure. And then, as Faith was saying, after the service is over, the casket will come out of the church and be taken by motorcade on the hearse to the Carter family home, just through downtown and a short distance away. And that's where they will have the private burial service.
John, as we're looking at images inside the church, there are many pews open for closest friends and family, but many people already inside. And we see that gorgeous array of flowers on Mrs. Carter's casket. And John, you have some really poignant details about some of the flowers there.
I talked with Annette Wise, who is a longtime friend of Mrs. Carter and has been involved with Mrs. Carter on many projects here in Plains, and grateful for Mrs. Carter's involvement in the church and in Plains activities as much as she ever was in all the activities she conducted worldwide. And Annette Wise said that she wanted to make sure that the flower arrangements, the spray on the casket, represented Rosalynn Carter's love for gardening, for nature, and so that's why there are Rosalynn Carter's camellias on that casket, and roses and boxwoods. Boxwoods from a cutting from Harry Truman's boxwoods on the White House lawn that the Carters took with them to Plains and kept them alive, kept them thriving. And of course, representations of monarch butterflies, which Rosalynn Carter was so instrumental in working toward their survival and creating a butterfly preserve here, and that idea has spread throughout South Georgia and beyond. Some of the people here will be students from Dooley County High School. 3 students from the Future Farmers of America. They were invited to come here because of Jimmy and Rosalynn's active involvement in FFA over the years, promoting agriculture, but also promoting youth and helping them fulfill their dreams, even in kinds of work that maybe aren't as attractive these days. But that's just another example of the involvement that the Carters had. And what Annette Wise told me was 2 days before Rosalynn Carter died, her camellias started to bloom. 2 months ahead of when they normally would bloom. And she said she was just speechless, unable to kind of describe how that hit her. And it was very meaningful to her and for the family as well.
I mentioned while we have this shot up from inside the church, the Carter Center said last night that these are members of the Georgia State Patrol Honor Guard, and they stood watch over Mrs. Carter's casket after it arrived in planes at the church there yesterday evening, and they remained there at this hour ahead of today's services.
You know, John, I think you make a really interesting point about the future of planes in Sumter County and how the Carters have been so dedicated to try to buoy the county and the community with economic help, meaning they're going to be buried there. President Carter taught Sunday school there for years. Plains is in a place in the state that's kind of awkward to get to, so it's not on the typical tourist trail of the interstate. You know, it's a ways from Macon, it's a ways from Columbus, it's a ways from Americus. So you have to find a way to get to Plains if you want to do so, and I think that has certainly set off a lot of alarms with the Carter family. I know I went down a couple of years ago. They invited me down when the Family Foundation was getting involved with Habitat for Humanity to try to take care of some of the homes in that community that had fallen into really poor shape. And at that time, there was the great concern about Plains' future and Sumter County as well. And there is a lot of grinding poverty there. There's generational poverty that remains a huge issue in that county.